Hello, I'm Haley and welcome to Starlight Cafe. Thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to be talking about Stranger Things Season 2. To give a non-spoiler summary of Stranger Things Season 2, Will has been rescued last season, and where we leave off, Elle is missing. Well, everyone presumes Elle dead, except for Mike, who spends every day trying to contact Elle. Some key points to look out for without going too into spoiler territory. We get introduced to a couple of new key characters. The big thing this season is, if you remember from the ending of Season 1, Will seemed to have some kind of infection or was vomiting up some strange substances. This season is going to be confronting that issue. But I don't want to give away too much, so if you're worried about spoilers, if you enjoyed Season 1, you'll enjoy Season 2. So go ahead and check that out and come back later. I'm going to give you 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Alright, for those who stuck around, thank you for joining me and thank you for listening. I want to start by talking about some of our new characters. Most importantly, Max. I was excited for Max to join the story because she's one of my more favorite characters in this series so far, and also it's important to pay attention to characters with such significance this time around, because obviously if you're caught up, you know what I'm talking about, but it seems Max is going to be very important. I think Max is pretty cool. I liked the kind of non-nerd addition to the group that she adds. I remember Billy being absolutely insufferable before, but I didn't expect... I forgot just how insufferable Billy is. Not to say necessarily that he deserves what happens to him later. I would say Billy is one of those characters who's an antagonist, but not the main antagonist. In this case, obviously, the main antagonist is the Mind Flayer. I didn't find this monster, or whatever you want to call it, quite as interesting as I did the Demogorgon. Maybe it's just because I'm more into those, like, predatory beast type of creatures than I am those omnipresent, sort of Lovecraftian, entities. I found Mike to be less likable this season than I did last season. Mike's never been my favorite character by any stretch. Lucas was more prevalent this season, it seemed, with his relationship with Max. And I quite liked him this season. I liked him last season too, but I liked him more this season. And then obviously we have, just to round off the main group from last season, you have Dustin, who was also quite a bit more endearing this season and got a lot more shine thanks to Dart and that whole situation. Dustin is probably my favorite of this core kid group, just because he's just kind of like fun and goofy. Also, I just think he's got a lot of charm. Intentionally so, but I do think he's got a lot of charm. And it's fun when he's on screen to see him interact with other characters. Like, for example, when he was basically telling Steve, like, what did he say to Steve? Something to the effect of, like, are those flowers for Mr. or Mrs. Wheeler? No. Oh, well then come on, let's go. What? What? It's just, I don't know, he's just so silly to me. Of that core kid group, we actually got some real interaction with Will this season. Will, to me, is one of those keep it all in, doesn't want to really be seen as a problem type of characters. I don't know if he really had an arc this season, but I like kind of the conflict that they gave his character this season, whereas like he's dealing with the consequences of being presumed missing, then presumed dead, only to reappear. He's kind of like the consequences of something drastic happening and like characters actually acknowledging that rather than just, oh, he was just gone a while. Like, I think about that stuff sometimes with different shows where it's like something like world-changing happens, and most of the characters go on like nothing happened, whereas Will is like clearly traumatized, like this affects him beyond the end of the story. Will definitely is also probably one of the more resilient characters in this show, maybe even the most resilient one, because he's got the most baggage of everybody here, save maybe Hopper, you could argue, but I don't know. I don't know if I would compare that the same because they're different kinds of problems. Oh, well, I guess there's 11. 11's got a lot going on, too. You could probably throw 11 up there at the top of the list of characters with a lot of baggage to deal with. Speaking of 11, it was nice to see. I mean, I knew obviously that 11 was fine and that she was going to end up like with Hopper, but I forgot exactly how we found out that Elle was with Hopper, and it seemed like it was just kind of spontaneous, like, oh, Elle's with Hopper. Well, shoot, okay. But it was nice. It was heartwarming to see him kind of get that father-daughter experience. I love when stories do that type of stuff. The next best example I could think of off the top of my head would be like in The Last of Us with Joel and Ellie, where it's like, that's not his daughter, but he gets that same father-daughter experience. That stuff warms my heart. And Elle having to like learn new words, and you know, she's not quite experiencing like what it's like to be a normal kid, but I would say that her quality of life went up from what she was living the past, 11, 13 years, I don't know however old she. Nancy is a much more complicated character than I ever would have expected going into this show. And obviously, I know that with retrospect, but having sat back down and rewatched these first 2 seasons, I'm able to process it more. Like, man, Nancy is just kind of, I don't want to say she's leading Steve on, but it's kind of like that character Murray said, where it's like, she's like afraid to know her true self, and she falls back on the safe option, which is Steve in this scenario. Which is interesting, because in the first season, I wouldn't have considered Steve the safe option. I don't know if anybody would have, because he was kind of that super popular jock type of character. He's definitely not that character now. Watching him have to interact with Billy, and just, he comes off as such a chump this season. But it's also kind of endearing. Anytime Steve interacted with Billy, he kind of came off looking like a chump. But I don't think Steve's actually a chump. This is just like the appearance he gave off. I think the implication was supposed to be like, oh, he's going soft. But I don't know, I just find Steve too likable to really think negatively of him. He's just kind of a sweet guy, and you see them setting up for him to be like this pretty good babysitter type of character. And you can tell, like, he loves Nancy, and it's unfortunate that she doesn't reciprocate that. But at the same time, that's alright. He'll be alright. I do fear for him in the future, because my understanding is every season they plan on killing off Steve, and every season we get lucky and they change their minds and he doesn't get written out of the story. Jonathan got more screen time, I feel like, this season, but it was all with Nancy, I feel like, so it was never really just Nancy or just Jonathan. It was Nancy and Jonathan all season. Like, they're kind of like a duo, a pair. So I just find it hard to really, like, characterize Jonathan by himself. Like, obviously he's his own character, but, like, I don't think we got any scenes where Jonathan was doing his own thing, to where we could see him isolated, where his actions aren't directly correlated to how Nancy acts, if that makes sense. So I find myself only really being able to say Jonathan's character defining trait is that he cares about Nancy. And obviously he cares about his family too, like his mom and Will, but he wasn't really around them all season. One of the new characters that I really was excited to talk about and was really excited to see on screen was number 8. I think her real name was Callie or Kali. I'm gonna call her Callie because I don't remember if it was Callie or Collie. So hopefully editing Haley will jump in there and put on screen the correct pronunciation. But in the meantime, I'm gonna call her Callie. So the weird thing about Callie is, to my memory, after this season, she never pops up again. Which is why I was so interested to watch this season and see, like, was there a reason? Did she die? What happened? And I don't think she's ever coming back, but the last season is approaching. We can be hopeful, but I don't see it happening. And I thought she was more relevant this season, only to find out, no, she was in one episode. She was there for almost the whole episode, but she was only really, like, actually a character and not a plot device for one episode. I believe it was episode 7. But she was, like, an interesting character. Like, I want her to come back in future seasons, in the last season, and the rest of the crew, but at least her, because I feel like she was a good source of growth for 11, and I liked the whole, like, outcasting, like, you know, this is, you know, where even though we don't all have gifts, we're all, you know, outcasts. We share that being different, and we're like a family, right? I think that was probably an important stepping stone in L11's growth, I guess is the word I'm looking for here. But it was also interesting to see that she kind of created this crossroads pathing for 11 as well, where you see, you know, Callie really wants to get revenge, and she's not afraid to kind of kill these bad men, quote, right? Whereas 11, she knows that these are bad men, quote, but at the same time, they're human with families, and you see 11 kind of think about it. And I think 11 is only capable of that because of the time she spent with Hopper and the boys. I also thought it was interesting that Callie was like, you made your choice, don't rob me of mine. Like, that I feel like was something that could have been elaborated on. 11 was definitely more interesting this season than last season. Well, I shouldn't say more interesting, because that implies that she was uninteresting last season, but that's not really what I'm saying. I found 11 to be... They kind of moved up higher on the list of how much I like a character in proportion to other characters, I guess. But yeah, I liked kind of obviously the interactions she had with Hopper, that kind of father-daughter relationship she had, but also the way she kind of has this rebellious teenager phase where she leaves, she breaks every single rule, and she goes out on her own, and she does pretty well out on her own, honestly. Also, the scenes with her and her mama had me crying. I didn't think it was going to happen this season. I thought it was just going to be a weird anomaly with going back and rewatching season 1. But here I am, season 2, sure enough, crying up a storm. So I don't know, maybe I'm just a crier these days? Or maybe going back and rewatching this with fresh perspective really, or different perspective maybe, really just has me emotional. Like, I just feel like this show is so well written, at least these first 2 seasons. And don't get me wrong, like, in an order, like in a ranked order, season 1 to me is still better than season 2, but I feel like that just doesn't give season 2 any credit, because the truth is season 2 was great. It's just that season 1 is phenomenal. 11 was definitely a lot more fun to watch, and she spent pretty much the entire second half of the season on her own, doing her own thing. She went from being like the main plot to the subplot, but then comes back around to be the main plot again, which was quite enjoyable for me. And that last minute decision at the end there, where she realizes that everyone's in trouble and she comes back, and then she does kind of that really cool entrance where she just opens the door and she's like, forget if she said anything, but that kind of here comes the cavalry moment that is 11 coming through that door after sending that baby Demogorgon flying through the window. Or I guess Demo Dog, to give Dustin's character some credit. And also the emotional growth she goes through. I didn't realize that they had hinted so early on that Dr. Brenner was still alive. And it almost makes me want to go back and re-watch that episode in season 1 where he died. Or I guess not so much when he dies, but when he is confronted with the Demogorgon, because I thought we saw the Demogorgon eat him or attack him or something, but I guess my memory is just wrong. I'll have to go back and look, but I kind of don't want to at the same time because I'm lazy. And then the way Callie was kind of trying to teach her, you've got these emotional wounds that you need to take care of. That was really interesting stuff, and it really does circle back around come season 4, as we all know. Well, those of us who were caught up know. I thought Joyce was kind of more of the same character this season, the whole helicoptering over Will thing. But I'm not complaining about it either. It definitely didn't hit me the same way it did last season, though. And I don't know if that's just because it's become an overplayed part of her character, or if it's just because there was more interesting things going on around it. That said, it is still cool to watch Joyce do her problem solving or puzzle solving, and just watching her do whatever it takes to keep her son safe and to help him. Which, on that topic, brings us to Dr. Owens, who I thought was going to be kind of like a shady character, and it was more like he was like probably the only like really truly moral scientist in there. And when I say that, I'm gonna give the exact example that I was thinking just now when I said that, which was that meeting in that little conference room after examining Will, finding that when they were examining the brain scans, and Dr. Owens said something to the effect of, it was some argument where the other scientists were like, we need to just go start burning the whatchamacallit, and Dr. Owens was like, what about this boy? There's got to be something we can do to save this boy. And the scientists were more concerned about it. They were basically like, he's gonna die anyway, whether we start the burning now or later, so we might as well start the burning now. And I don't remember if he said this or if I thought it, but in my head I imagine it would have been kind of cool to hear him say something to the effect of, now let me bring his mother in here and you tell his mother that and see how well that goes. That's just, now I'm certain that he didn't say that, but that was something that I thought he should have said. But he still stood on that kind of angle where it's like, we need to help this, we promised to help this kid, and it's the moral thing to do. So I liked Dr. Owens, I guess is what I'm saying. Or like when he helps Bob navigate to the exit, only for Bob to get screwed over anyway, but that's besides the point. And then the way he helps. I don't know, he helps. He listens and he helps, even though he doesn't really need to. Bob was so endearing. He's such a sweet guy. He just wants to help. And then when stuff goes crazy, he doesn't I mean, yeah, he asks questions, but he's not judging. He's still helping. He doesn't understand what's going on, but he's still helping. He solves the little, like, tunnel map thing that they had going on. Helps find Hopper. He is at the station with them. He's not bothered that he's gonna have to sign some NDA stuff. He's just, you know what? I'm here now, and I'm gonna help however I can. And that is a W man's right there. That's all I'm gonna say about that. Rest in peace to my boy Bob. He didn't deserve what happened to him. He should still be here with us in season 5. Hopper was his usual self this season, going around investigating, not talking to anybody, just doing his own thing, doing everything by himself, which is something I really don't like about Hopper, but at the same time, it does create a lot more intrigue for the watcher, in the sense that if anything happens to him, the stakes are higher because he's always on his own and he doesn't communicate with anybody. Case in point, right before the tunnel situation, when he finds out that the drawings are tunnels, and he puts together that those tunnels are the stuff that's killing the pumpkins and all that, goes right there but doesn't say a word to Joy, just leaves. And then sure enough, he's by himself. Something happens. He goes down. Now we gotta go save him. We didn't have to do this. We wouldn't have had to go through any of this detour. If you would have just communicated and we could have come up with something as a team, it would have saved a lot of headache and a lot of resources and manpower if he hadn't have done that. And the information that they learned from it is information they would have got regardless. So it was just a straight up character flaw on Hopper's part. An intentional character flaw, don't get me wrong. This isn't me criticizing the writing. In fact, I'm praising it, because this is an obvious flaw of Hopper's, and he even admits later in the season that, he was being stupid. Now, granted, I think he was talking about the way he was going about interacting with 11, but the logic applies, because these dumb things that he's doing directly correlate to his relationship with 11, in the sense that if he would think ahead for a minute to communicate with 11 that he's running late, or to just stop what he's doing, this weird stuff with the pumpkins, it's still gonna be here, whether you're staying until 5 or you're staying until midnight, makes no difference. But I guess, if I were to try and be reasonable, you could argue you don't know that everything's gonna be alright. Well, of course everything's not gonna be alright, but you don't know that it's not gonna significantly escalate to a point where it's a serious, serious problem, which is probably the logic that he was going about. But, at the end of the day, you can't do everything by yourself. But, he comes around by the end of the season, and he's always there to help, and he's always really important. So you can't really complain too much about Hopper, but it is an obvious, glaring character flaw that makes the show more interesting at the same time. The last character I want to talk about is Murray. That's the conspiracy theory journalist guy from Chicago, I think. I think he's written to be either annoying or funny, and I'm not sure what they were going for, but I'll tell you what I thought of him personally. I thought Murray was annoying in the same way I think, if you listen to my Wednesday reviews, I found Murray the same kind of annoying that I find Fester annoying. Where it's not like he's a bad character, he's just the way he behaves is the type of behavior that annoys me. He's reading people, but sometimes he reads the situations wrong. Actually, I'm not giving this guy enough credit. Technically, he wasn't far off. He got a lot of info right, without having the correct sources. So, and he does peg Nancy and Jonathan. Excuse me, wow. And he does hit the nail on the head with Nancy and Jonathan, their characters. But then we'll go and say Nancy's hard to read, which is very strange to me. Like, you'll get it exactly right, and then say, but you're harder to read. Huh? Sounds like she's not that hard to read, but okay. It's nice that he's bringing down Hawkins' lab, or helping bring down Hawkins' lab, and he was pretty open and believed everything that Nancy said, and I liked the analogy that he used where it's, or not the analogy, I liked the logic he used where it's like, I believe you, but it's not about getting me to believe you, it's about getting everyone to believe you, or everyone else to believe you. That is pretty much the crux of the issue. I mean, time and again he did hit the nail on the head, and now that I'm sitting here talking about this out loud, even though he annoys me, he is suddenly less annoying, and I'm actually really appreciating his character now that I'm sitting here talking about it out loud and voicing my thoughts to you all, or more realistically, voicing my thoughts to my phone at 4 in the morning in my car like a freak. Anyway, the rest of the characters, both recurring and new, I don't have a lot to say about. Like, the arcade guy, unimportant to me. Erica, Lucas's sister, actually Lucas's whole family, unimportant to me. Obviously Erica's going to become more important later, but we're talking about season 2 here, so unimportant, uninteresting, don't care, irrelevant to me. Dustin's family, it's just his mom. Dustin's mom, not relevant to me. The Wheeler parents, not relevant to me, although I know that Mrs. Wheeler is going to be more important next season. And they're kind of setting that up this season, but I'm not really a fan of that behavior, so this is not something I'm looking forward to having to watch again. But that said, Ted, or Mr. Wheeler, whatever you want to call him, absolutely just the most oblivious, annoying. He actually kind of sucks. Talk about annoying characters, and Ted Wheeler is the most annoying character in this show, probably. Can't read the room, completely oblivious, really not that helpful, ever. Like, at least Mrs. Wheeler is trying, but it feels like Mr. Wheeler just puts in no effort 100% of the time. Overall, I really liked this season. I said it earlier, but I do think season 1 overall was better, but when I say better, it doesn't mean bad here. So I'm going to put this in 2 different perspectives. Perspective 1, if you think about a tier list, season 1 is an S tier, where season 2 is an A tier, right? A tier, it's still great, good, no, not good, it's still great, it's just not excellent, like, far above and beyond like season 1 is. Where season 1, I cried all but 1 episode the whole season, and I was locked in and paying attention the whole season, and I was still doing all of those things for season 2. You know, it's just, I think the only thing that really separates season 1 and season 2 is 2 things, I think, off the top of my head. One is the mystery is a bit different in season 2 because we the viewers have a bit more of an idea of what's going on, and unfortunately I have the bias of having already watched it, like being caught up, and so I really know what's going on, you know? So it might be harder for me to really get invested in this mystery, and that's the downside to coming back around to this a second time, where this might have probably been better the first time around. But also, I think the other thing is just that sequels of anything suffer from what I would call more of the same syndrome, where because it's the same show, it's the same material, which means things that were fresh and interesting in season 1, when they carry over to season 2, it doesn't hit the same way. It loses its flavor. Which is why, like, the Max and Billy stuff it was fresh and interesting, and Lucas getting more character because of that, and the way he interacts with Max, and the way Max navigates between interacting with Lucas and Billy. Like, that was new and fun and interesting. 11 being separated from the kid group and interacting with Hopper more closely, that was new and different and interesting. And then she leaves and she's on her own, and she's in a whole different town, completely separated from anything going on in Hawkins. That was new, that was fun, that was interesting. Whole different set of characters. Another character that has powers, and her powers are different from Eleven's. So then when you have things like Joyce being an overprotective helicopter parent because her son's going through the most traumatic shit you've ever seen, it's like, yeah, this was great in season 1, and now it's like, it's still the same level of quality, maybe slightly less, but I don't even know if I'd say that. But it's just, we've heard this song before, you know, we've played this game before. I've seen it already. It's not as interesting. So it really does bring Joyce's character down. Not because she's a bad character, and not because she's doing anything wrong. It's just, like I said, it's more of the same. And I think that is why season 2 is just not as good as season 1 to me. That, and I like I said, I enjoy the Demogorgon more. Maybe that's my Dead by Daylight bias. Maybe it's a bias of just preferring like these beasts, these kind of less intelligent, beastly, on the hunt type of creatures. Like, maybe I just prefer that more than, like I said, this omnipresent sort of cosmic horror, Lovecraftian being type of characters. But with all that said, I'm excited for season 3. Let me know in the comments, what did you guys think of season 2? And which one do you like better? Do you prefer season 2 or season 1 of Stranger Things? Let me know you guys' thoughts. I'm excited to start season 3, and I'll see you guys next week. Have a great day. Bye-bye.